Hey guys, welcome back to the Light Side Podcast. My name is Shola. I'm your host, and I'm so thankful you're here. In today's topic, we're going to dive into the book that I really loved called Attached. It made a significant impact on me. Before we dive in, happy Valentine's Day, happy Love Day if you're listening to this on February 14th. I'm going to tell you why this book was so significant for me. Because the book is written from the perspective of psychology and it provides biological research and evidence, it really hit home with me. It really sank in with me and resonated. What we hear in society as far as the way you should behave, the way you should really go about being in a romantic relationship versus the actual psychological, natural, human tendency and need that we have, which is very clear that one is more sustainable if we go the human dependency route. If we go the biological route, it is more sustainable. It is more logical and intuitive to us as well. And so the book really hit home with me for many reasons, but especially because it highlighted the contrast between messages we hear in society and all these different gurus out there as far as this is what you need to do. This is the secret formula you need to follow in order to find love, in order to be happy in a relationship, versus what it says, versus what psychology says, what biology says. And the research I found to be so fascinating. So super excited to get into the topic. It made such a significant impact for me because I know that I have an anxious avoidant attachment style. I have a disorganized attachment style, but through therapy conversations and relationships, there was a period in my life where I thought that I was just anxious. And I think it's really important to understand your specific attachment style. There is anxious, avoidant, and then there is anxious avoidant, which is the disorganized one, which is very rare percentage of the population. And then there is secure, which is really compatible with all attachment styles. What I found to be really like a big sigh was that we can all work our way to a secure attachment style. Also, similarly, there are people who will be secure, but with the wrong partner, they may become anxious or disorganized or, avoidant. So I hope that you're able to get your hands on it and read it yourself. So one of the messages that sunk with me and resonated so much was the message that your needs are valid. You don't have to compromise them. Our culture, society seriously encourages us to feel like we need to be hyper independent, that we can't depend on anyone, that if we have needs, it's too much, that we're needy or that we're classified. If you have needs, you're essentially too much for anyone, and that you need to work overtime to fulfill all your needs on your own. And I love that this book proves all of that to be false, that it's within our biology to be dependent on each other. There's research that the book talks about where women were being, studied as far as like experiencing a tough time while doing it alone, holding a stranger's hand or holding their partner's hand. And the difference found in the results was mind-blowing. And it just proves how much we need one another and that it's okay to need one another, that it's a beautiful thing to rely on each other, and that it's okay for our happiness to depend on one another. And I think there's a fine line that we talk about as far as like finding love within, and like, especially today being Valentine's Day, I've been reflecting on where I was last year this time, and I was really on a deep self-love journey because that I was missing that. And I think this is something me and my boyfriend even talk about, is that it is really important to build that relationship with yourself and that level of self-love and self-reliance, self-trust. But I don't think that it's expected for us to only rely on that. Another key point that the book drives home is the importance of being secure within ourselves and providing a secure base for others too. And I think that really just ties into what I just said about the need for self-love. It's like, we're not saying that those things are mutually exclusive, it is important for us to love ourselves. And it's also important to be okay needing others. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's actually a great thing. I love the advice it shared around ways you can build a secure base. It said, you can start practicing these traits yourself by being available, allowing the space for others to be dependent on you, being a person that people can seek comfort with, like providing comfort to others, to your partner when they need it, and basically providing support and allowing your partner to do their own thing, not feeling like they have to always be with you or that you have to always be with them, and not micromanaging or being all over, but providing that support and courage and encouragement to pursue the things that your partner wants to pursue, to provide that secure base, to give them the confidence, that kind of that reinforcement to pursue their goals and desires and to boost their self-esteem. As I'm even saying this, there's a lot of times a lot of advice out there around like, oh, if a person needs all that from you, they're too needy, dependent, they need to work on their self-love. I don't think so. I think that it is true that we can have both. We have our own level of self-love and assuredness, but having our partners, it's a pillar to lean on for strength and for more of that. And I think I wanted to bring that up because I think that those two notions can be mixed up a lot, where people think like, oh, that person's too needy, they need me to reassure them. What I really loved about the book was the continuous sentiment that your needs are legitimate. You don't need to justify them. You don't need to modify them. You don't need to change them so that they fit the mold of what society is telling you your needs need to be or what they need to look like. I think that was really, really amazing. So much of the time, especially as women with a lot of deep emotions, I did feel like I was too much, that by expressing myself, it was like a burden potentially. And I love the encouragement that the book provides in being unapologetic about what you need in a relationship. And that is of longevity. Like I think it was mentioned in the book too, like a lot of times people put on a facade almost, and they try to accommodate another person's attachment style. But ultimately, their attachment style is going to seep through. It's going to come through. And so, I think I related to that a lot because I had an anxious attachment style, and I naturally would always pair up or attract into my life avoidant men. The book really says that that is the most common pairing, is the anxious with the avoidant. It does an excellent job of diving into how to understand and get to know your attachment style, and how to also know others' attachment style, like your partners, the people in your life, and how to communicate effectively within those dynamics, how to heal your attachment style so that it can be conducive to your health and your emotional well-being, and it helps you improve your emotional well-being, but also improve your emotional intelligence, and helps you navigate relationships that can be challenging because of the contrasting attachment styles, and how to work your way through those. And ultimately, ideally, the goal of the book is so that everyone works their way into a secure attachment style. I don't want to jump ahead in time, but I honestly have seen myself healing my attachment style, and I'm noticing a really big difference. And I will say that the book also says this, it does matter who your partner is, in the sense that certain people can trigger tendencies in you. Even though there's this common stigma in society that we shouldn't appear needy or overly dependent, or like to play it cool and not show too much emotion or too much attachment, and like, you need to behave a certain way in order to not push your partner away. The book says, and attachment theory proves, that biology shows that we're human beings are biologically wired to form attachments with each other, with other human beings. That it's a survival mechanism, it's evolved over time, and it shows that we have a need, literally a need, a physiological, biological and emotional need for close bonds. It's innate and crucial for our emotional well-being. And to acknowledge that is literally the first step in being able to form healthy relationships, in my mind. The book also encourages us to view dependency as a strength. Instead of seeing it as a weakness, to see it as this ability to have a strong and healthy relationship, that we're able to depend on our significant other is an ability to demonstrate strength, vulnerability. And it's really through relationships that we can depend on one another, that we can go out into the world with confidence and a sense of like security and, again, well-being. And I think there is tons of quotes out there on this around behind every strong man is an even stronger woman, or we've seen this a lot in society in some ways, but I think unfortunately, especially in recent years, over the last decade or so, the advice is constantly to not be needy or to play it cool, not be too much. That the book also describes how we can be more responsive to what our partner's needs are based on their attachment style. So for instance, like secure attachments, how they behave, it describes scenarios and examples. It describes behaviors and scenarios of an anxious person and a avoidant person. And I can share a couple of examples. I just really want to emphasize that how the book says that interdependence, meaning like rejecting the whole notion that we need to be so independent, is our biological predisposition. We need each other. And that need is totally against what societal ideals are and what they're teaching us right now about like how we need to behave in romantic relationships. And it's the point that a certain level of dependency is not only natural, but it's beneficial. And it helps us lead more fulfilling, more joyful, more stronger connections and relationships, which makes sense, right? Like we want to be able to feel safe with each other. We always talk about creating a safe space in our environments. And what's more safe than being vulnerable and accepting and verbalizing and admitting that we need one another? Instead of society really making the ultimate goal being independent, it talks about how we can better make space and understand and embrace our need for relationships, our needs within relationships, our needs for attachment. And to be able to accept those needs, we can be happier as a whole and have more secure relationships. That it's literally when we try to be independent is when we embed more of that anxious attachment or that avoidant attachment. And instead, we'll have more satisfying, more resilient, more gratifying relationships and connections. I found it to be a breath of fresh air to hear a different perspective than all of the different relationship coaches that I hear out there. I think there's just so much around be independent, be on your own, do this, do that, but not so much like, hey, your needs are valid, your emotions are valid, what you want is okay. Embrace it. Okay, so quickly, I want to share with you the various attachment styles and how you can figure out which one you belong with. There's definitely quizzes and tests that you can take out there, but in the meantime, I'll just be very brief with this. So if you're a secure attachment style, you feel comfortable being close in relationships. You feel comfortable being open and vulnerable. You don't fear commitment. You're not playing games. You're able to listen to your partner's needs. You're able to communicate your needs without getting defensive or frustrated. Secure attachment styles have an ability to trust other people. They can work through conflict. They're not, again, gaslighting or deflecting their problems. They believe that problems can be solved through mutual effort. They're not one to like avoid and run when a problem comes up. And so people who are very stable and reliable, and they're the people that can provide comfort and encouragement and like safe space. Those are the secure attachment styles. And then there is anxious attachment style. Anxious attachment style is when you're you're overly worried about your partner's love and commitment. You're always feeling uneasy. You don't know if where they stand. If you haven't heard from them, you need immediate reassurance. So if for instance, they don't see your text or respond right away, you get anxious and you're wondering what happened. They might not like you. There's a need to get constant reassurance immediately, and not hearing from your partner might cause really intense jealousy, or you might lose focus and everything else is literally put to the side because you can't focus on anything else but the other person and why they may not be responding to you. And then you blame yourself for everything. Oh my God, maybe they're not responding because X, Y, and Z. And maybe I said this, maybe I said that. You start overthinking everything about what you are doing and your behavior because a lack of response from them, or because you haven't heard back from them. Anxious attachment styles crave closeness and a lot of reassurance, and they fear, honestly, someone who is anxious avoidant for a long time, it's you fear being too needy or a burden and too much. You always think you're being too much, but you can't help yourself to be that way. It just exasperates almost. And I can go off, but I think you get the picture. It's that person who feels really uneasy, especially when they don't get immediate reassurance. They're only happy when they're extremely close with their person, and any sign of maybe lack of communication or any sign of frustration, they immediately blame themselves. And then avoidant attachment is when independence is way too high up the priority ladder, and avoidants feel really suffocated when people get too close to them. They're the type of people that tend to ghost, and I don't want to categorize, but it's just, I think the fastest way of describing it, they just prefer not to rely on other people or have others rely on them. And when they see that, they pull away and they almost want to run and escape and distance themselves. And so they're the type of people that you notice especially you see this in the anxious avoidant dynamic, because anxious wants more attention and the avoidant just pulls away. They just keep pulling away, especially when things get serious, especially when the other person expresses their need for them. And so they can be very dismissive. There is this tendency to pride ourselves on being self-sufficient with the avoidance. There is this pattern creating distance to avoid attachment, to avoid the potential of getting hurt. And I believe the book explains that this comes up for a lot of people if their parent was very inconsistent or gone a lot. So one or two parents wasn't available. So the avoidant learned that I need to be independent and I need to be on my own because I can't rely on another person. It comes from deep, deep pain. And the good news is that it can be healed. And I have an avoidant tendency too. And I've been healing it, working on it, because I had a disorganized attachment. But can't stress enough how important it is for me that if you identify with any of these, that you believe and you understand and you take away that you can heal it, that it is possible for you. And I'm happy to help you on that journey as someone who's gone through it, and through my coaching and EFT and other tools that I have training within my practice. I just want you to know that you can heal it. Okay. And then there's the disorganized attachment, which is a mix of anxious and avoidant. And so that's when it's very confusing. And also a lot of people get confused by avoidant attachment too, because avoidants they don't come off avoidant to begin with. Everything's all dandy, and then they become really confusing to their partners afterwards, because then they start distancing themselves, they send mixed signals. So avoidance can be very confusing to read, and they tend to get that message from their partners. So with the disorganized attachment, it's someone who wants that intimacy, who wants that closeness, but they randomly and suddenly and unexpectedly tend to pull away, or they react really negatively when intimacy comes up, as if they don't want it. And it can really hurt the other person, especially if the other person is anxious, then it triggers them even more. I think, the book does a good job of explaining how secure attachments are more compatible with both the anxious and or the avoidant, because they don't read into things. They don't take things as their fault. They don't like take things to an extreme, so to speak. And so with a disorganized attachment, the behavior is really unpredictable. And a lot of it, of course, stems from unresolved fear and trauma, unresolved childhood trauma. And so it's this never-ending cycle of wanting to be intimate, but being afraid of the vulnerability that it comes with. So I hope that by explaining the various attachment styles, I'm able to resonate more deeply with you on which you identify with, and just again reassure you that there is a path to healing it. And, I recommend listening to the book or reading it. And if you find that you want someone to work with you through this, provide accountability, help you to dig deep into your childhood as far as what is coming up for you when it comes to your attachment style, I would love to do that with you. This is my passion, to help you on your healing journey. I love so much to be able to help you find your blind spots and to rewire and change what isn't serving you to a different narrative that will serve you. So let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to reach out to me. My contact info is in the show notes. And I want to leave you with some advice that the book shares on how to effectively communicate within a relationship, because a lot of the advice that the book continued to share was that it's important to be able to effectively communicate despite your attachment style. And through effective communication, really heal our attachment styles. So one of the big advice that it shared was to wear your heart on your sleeve and be honest, be emotionally brave, and share how you feel. And be okay focusing on your needs in a relationship, and be okay communicating them. And really, truly take both of your well-beings into consideration. So this isn't to say like, oh, just focus on yourself, but it's like focus on you and your partner, because truly they are interconnected. If something is only serving you and not your partner, it would ultimately not serve you either. It would come back to hurt you as well. So ultimately, it's like, look for ways to serve both of you in your communication, in considering each side, in making compromises. And express yourself in terms of like, I need, I feel, I want. Like, use verbs to express yourself and be specific. Being assertive and non-apologetic about how you feel, because it's besides the point if what you want and need is illegitimate to someone else. It's about soothing your needs. It's about meeting your needs, because that's how you and your partner will both be happy, is if both of your needs are met. And so if you're not verbalizing and expressing your needs, then your partner won't know what to do. And so I love this point so much. Don't blame, but be assertive and unapologetic about what you need in a connection, about what you need in a relationship. And it talks about how a lot of times the tendency for both the anxious and avoidant or disorganized is to go into protest behavior, and it explains protest behavior and how it's so ineffective. And just to give you a sense of what that means. So protest behavior within an anxious attachment style is when your attachment style gets triggered, you need constant contact. So you start like texting and calling and incessantly. Or jealousy comes into play, where you're feeling like really insecure and abandoned, and you start acting out drama, and you you need a lot of reassurance and attention. And as a result, a lot of times the avoidance starts to withdraw because this behavior really pulls them away. So protest behavior for avoidant attachment is pulling away physically, emotionally, like cutting off contact potentially. This is like when a lot of people give the silent treatment or ghosts, they start ignoring or like trying to get their space and control back. And they again focus on their independence and their need to like be autonomous. And so avoidant attachments really display this behavior as a way to like maintain their distance and independence when they feel like their personal space is just being encroached upon. And so both are just ways of not communicating effectively. And the book really talks about this, gives a lot of examples. And understanding it in ourselves helps us see what our behavior is, what our pattern is in relationships, and how we can work on becoming better, more healthier in our connections and improve our connections, have healthier communication, and improve our attachment dynamics. So I think that it's, again, important to recognize, understand these behaviors so that you can see them in your partner, so that you can see how it is really hurting your relationships, so that you can take steps to improve them. And all in all, despite your attachment style, I hope that this episode really takes home the point that dependency is not a sign of weakness, that it's a strength, and it allows us to form close, supportive, trusting relationships that feel safe. And it is also not incompatible with independence. It doesn't have to be one or the other. You can be both independent in your life, in your individual pursuits, and still be dependent on your partner for emotional support and security. And really, dependency is not a path of losing yourself. And so understanding all of these can really help us become more emotionally balanced, improve our emotional connections, as well as our relationships, and heal parts of us that feel unseen and unheard, and create balance, because no one wants to lose themselves in a relationship. And I think the book really explains to us how we can heal our anxious or avoidant tendencies, and keep in mind how relationships can really serve us instead of hurt us or derail us or create these like fussy people out of us that are too needy or clingy or too dependent. I wish you so much love. I hope that you are able to allow yourself to open up to human connection and love through this book. I hope that what I shared with you helps you and serves you. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm going to create more content on this. So if you don't already follow me on Instagram, find me there at Shola Tara. And I'm also posting a lot more on TikTok and YouTube. So feel free to find me. Please share with me your thoughts on this episode. I hope it helped you. If it resonated with you, please consider sharing it. Rate and review this podcast. I am sending you so much love. Until next time, thank you.